Greetings and salutations, friends and gamers of all stripes. My name is GM Dave. I am your man behind the screen, and today I wanted to talk to you about the possibility that you might be shortchanging yourself in your gaming life. What do I mean by this? Well, this mainly goes out to the players out there and the GMs who tend to be more about the numbers. Tabletop games, as a lot of us will be well aware, are oftentimes games that involve the rolling of multiple dice and the addition of many numbers to dish out many other numbers worth of damage or healing or what have you, to change the numbers of our health up or down until such time as somebody hits 0 and they die. It's also about a lot of murder and death. When you really get down to it, even the most combat-like games are still about a fair amount of murder and death. But those murders and deaths are achieved by numbers. But why do those numbers matter? Think about that for a moment. What makes those numbers matter? Why is it that we care about rolling high and beating our enemies and, getting those better numbers than what they're getting? Well, because we enjoy that sense of victory. What makes us feel like we have that sense of victory? In games like D&D and Pathfinder, really most, if not all, tabletop role-playing games. In fact, I would argue all tabletop role-playing games, it's not a set system put in place. There's not a set, a set story put in place. There's not a set arc put in place that you must follow every time you play. It's not a video game. This isn't like even Skyrim, where, yes, you've got a whole bunch of different things you can do and a whole bunch of different places you can explore, but the different individual stories within that game, they're set in stone. These stories, these campaigns, these games, by and large, they're made by us, for us. Made by the GMs, for their players. So, if these games don't have a preset story, excluding adventure modules, of course, but even in the case of adventure modules, it's expected that the DMs and GMs running them are going to kind of customize things a little bit. So if these things aren't set in stone, if these numbers don't really hold that much meaning by themselves, what gives them meaning? The context of our games gives them meaning. The context of the story we're experiencing in our games gives them meaning, even if that story is incredibly light. This does tie in a little bit to the video I will be releasing later this week, where I go into details of what I feel constitute the core elements of a tabletop role-playing game. And this is where I want to go into players possibly shortchanging themselves. Particularly those players who care so much more about the numbers than anything else. Why do you care about those numbers? Really think about that for a moment. The high numbers, the big damage, the hard swing that you do makes you feel really good. But what did you actually do? You rolled the dice and you added some numbers and you told what those numbers added up to the guy running your game, or girl running your game, or whatever else. And then they tell you what that means. But what does that accomplish on its own? All you've done is roll some dice and add some numbers together. Where does the context come in? The context comes in from your character and the story being played out. And where I think you're shortchanging yourselves, assuming that you're not fully experiencing this, or at least not trying to, is when you don't invest yourself into your character through at least trying roleplay. Now, I'm not attempting to assume anything here. I'm not attempting to make the assumption that, oh, anyone who cares about those big numbers, everyone who gets invested in that just doesn't care about role-playing. I know that's not true because I am a person who both really enjoys rolling high on those dice and thoroughly enjoys a lot of heavy role-play too. I am the guy that likes both. I mean, I'm proof positive that you can be the guy that enjoys and does strive for both. Even if I am not the type of guy who's going to go out of my way to necessarily build the most mechanically perfect, insanely good character for a specific task, I am still going to really enjoy it when I can get those high rolls, those big numbers, and then describe that hard hit I did across the face of that orc with my +1 mace. However, there are a lot of players out there, a lot of GMs as well, who do make that distinction and do make that division. And I think it's those players who are shortchanging themselves. And they're shortchanging themselves because as much fun as they are having with just those big numbers, I do honestly think they could be having even more fun and making those big numbers that they like so much feel even more impactful if they were to invest themselves more fully in the character and story of the game. The reason I say this is because, quite simply, those numbers don't mean anything without the context of why they're important. And the context of why they're important is dependent solely on the story and the game that your GM is presenting to you, the players. The best way to increase the value of that context is to interact with that story and that game. And the most meaningful way to interact with it isn't just to roll dice and say that you're swinging a sword at that bugbear over there, that you want to do a power attack at that dragon over there, that you want to throw a fireball at that swarm of ice devils over there. It's to describe your actions. It's to get into at least a little bit of detail. It's to speak in the voice of your character, to interact with the world that's presented to you, to build investment. Because by building investment, you build stakes. By building stakes, you increase your involvement in that world. You increase your involvement and the meaningfulness of that context. And by increasing the meaningfulness of that context, those big impactful roles are going to feel bigger. They're going to feel more impactful. They're going to be inherently more exciting for you. Now, this does not mean you have to go whole hog in and become a full-blown actor at the tabletop. You don't have to take on a crazy voice. You don't have to sit there and carry on sessions-long conversations in character, solve these massive social puzzles without hardly ever rolling a skill check, but mostly just speaking things out. You don't have to go full-on tabletop storytelling mode. But I think everyone should, at least a little bit, try to incorporate some role play into their games. They should try to tie that in a little bit more. Even if they don't necessarily feel that's something that they're fully going to like, you should at least give it a shot. See if it is something that does help to increase the impact of what you're doing. Because I found that more often than not, amongst the players who are those number obsessed, roll the dice, get the big hit, optimize for days types of players, when they do at least try to get a little bit more invested, if they haven't before, in my experiences, probably about 85% of the time that I've seen players do that, they started to care a lot more about, for one, whether or not their characters died, which is a big thing. That's something else I noticed, that a lot of those number-heavy players aren't quite so concerned about. If their characters die, there tends to be the mindset of, well, I can just make another character. But if you're more invested in it, you care more about whether or not your character dies. If you care more about whether or not your character dies, you're going to care more about making sure you make those big rolls. The investment that you put, the time that you put into optimizing is going to mean more to you at that point. And if it means more, it feels better when you win. Because it's kind of shows that, hey, I made good choices. I played smart. This aspect of things that I like to do, the strategy, the high rolls, the prepping for strong enemies, it paid off. And I lived. And I didn't just live, I won. I beat this enemy. I overcame them. And I'm stronger for it now. I've earned something for it. It feels better. It feels more rewarding. But if all you care about is the numbers, if you don't even try to roleplay at all, and there's nothing saying you have to, maybe you just plain don't enjoy roleplay at all. Maybe you're not interested in doing that at all. Maybe you've tried it and you just didn't like it. That's fine. It's not going to work for everybody. It's not going to be for everybody. That's the beauty of tabletop games, is that they are meant to be flexible like that. They're meant to accommodate the people who love just rolling those dice and getting those big numbers every bit as much as they can accommodate the people who barely roll 1 or 2 dice per session and spend the vast majority of it just talking to each other. But I think you are doing yourself a grave disservice if you don't at least try to experience the roleplay side of things. Because in my experiences, more often than not, getting invested in that side of the hobby makes the big numbers and optimization side feel even more rewarding. Because the context becomes more important. The involvement and investment becomes more meaningful. And the stakes feel more real to you. That's why I think everyone, at least once or twice, should really give a serious chance for role-playing, even if they don't like it. And by the flip side, those players who don't really like as much the optimization, the high numbers, all of that, I think you guys should give that another shot too, and mix it in with your heavier roleplay. See how much the impact of seeing those big numbers, seeing the mechanical decisions you made reflect well on your character, how that makes you feel. Because it goes both ways. Each side of this influences the other, or at least it can. And it can do so in a very positive and meaningful and exciting way, if you let it. That's about all for this little video today, friends and gamers. What are your thoughts on this idea? Should people who aren't as into it, attempt to roleplay a little more, give it a shot and see if they can build that investment and then make the numbers feel more meaningful to them? Should the heavier role players give another shot towards being a little more mechanically focused and see if building those big numbers for themselves can make them feel even better about the character that they've made? Because now you're backing up the roleplay side of thing with the ability to actually succeed mechanically. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below, and if you like my content, would like to see more, please consider subscribing to my channel and hitting that bell notification icon. If you want more consistent notifications though, I strongly suggest that you follow me on social media. You can find links for all of those in the description down below. I post links to all of my videos on the day they are posted. You can also find my videos mirrored on BitChute as well. If you find that YouTube is not really your thing, you can follow me there, and I highly recommend that you do. Furthermore, I have now started a Patreon page. If you would like to donate to that, every little bit helps me to improve these videos. I am going with a pay-what-you-want model. It is entirely up to you to decide how much my content is worth to you. You pay whatever you feel like. And even if you don't donate, well, I still just appreciate the fact that you're here watching this video with me today. So with all of that said, friends and gamers of all stripes, once again, my name is GM Dave, and as usual, it is my sincere hope that you continue to roll high, role play well, and game on. Have a lovely day.